which is a lot of people, but the number is much higher than that. That's been proven. And they've destroyed a lot of families because when they lose a child, or even if their child is heavily...
Tonight, federal agents have uncovered what authorities are calling the largest institutional corruption case in Minnesota history.
4:52 a.m. Minneapolis, Minnesota. The city was frozen in November darkness. Cedar-Riverside, the heart of the Somali American community, was silent, except for the rumble of unmarked SUVs converging on a single building. 73 federal agents moved through streets thick with frost. Their target was a government office that had operated without suspicion for nearly a decade, the Somali Treasury Liaison Office. Inside those walls, investigators would uncover 3.9 tons of narcotics, $410 million in cash, cryptocurrency, and gold. Evidence of a pipeline that had funneled poison into American communities for 7 years. This wasn't a rogue operation. This was institutional corruption weaponized by the Sinaloa and CJNG cartels, protected by diplomatic immunity, and funded by the deaths of over 2,000 Americans. What agents discovered that morning would rewrite everything law enforcement thought they knew about foreign corruption on U.S. soil. If you want to understand how cartels infiltrate institutions we trust, hit like so this story reaches every community that needs to know. The investigation didn't start with intelligence. It started with the body. September 19th, 2023, Bloomington, Minnesota. A Target parking lot under fluorescent lights. Marcus Holden, 19 years old, engineering student at the University of Minnesota, was found slumped against his car at 11:47 p.m. Paramedics arrived in 3 minutes. They couldn't save him. Toxicology came back 48 hours later. Fentanyl laced with a synthetic compound called parafluorofentanyl. Forensic analysts had only encountered it twice before, both times in cartel shipments intercepted at the Arizona border. The pills in Marcus's pocket carried a stamp. A crescent moon with 3 stars. Local police ran it through their database. Nothing. DEA analysts in Washington ran the same stamp. 17 matches across 5 states. South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota. 47 overdose deaths in 18 months, all within a 600-mile radius. All involving the same rare fentanyl compound. The pattern was surgical, not street-level chaos, not dark web randomness. These drugs moved through structured channels, appearing in mid-sized cities with significant Somali immigrant populations. Rochester, St. Cloud, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Demo. The supply was clean, consistent, and flooding neighborhoods faster than any trafficking Model D had mapped. Special Agent Rebecca Torino pulled the case. She requested financial analysis from FinCEN, the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. What came back made her stop breathing. Between January 2021 and November 2023, over $600 million had moved through 17 shell companies, all registered to addresses within 4 blocks of the Somali Treasury Liaison Office in Cedar-Riverside. The companies had legitimate-sounding names: Blue Horizon Imports, Crescent Trade Solutions, Northern Freight Logistics. On paper, they imported textiles, electronics, food products, but the money didn't match trade volumes. Payments arrived in fractured amounts: 37,000, 52,000, 94,000, always under the $100,000 federal reporting threshold, always from accounts in Mexico, Colombia, Dubai, Mombasa, and Karachi. The amounts were too precise, the timing too coordinated. This wasn't amateur laundering. This was institutional-grade financial engineering. Comment exposed below if you believe corruption hiding behind government offices must be dragged into the light. Torino escalated to FBI counterintelligence. The Somali Treasury Liaison Office wasn't a traditional embassy. It functioned as a financial coordination hub for Somali nationals living in America, processing remittances, facilitating business investments, offering consular services. It operated under limited diplomatic protections, a gray zone in international law. The office employed 23 people. Most were clerical workers, accountants, cultural liaisons. But 3 names kept appearing in financial surveillance with troubling frequency. Abdi Yusuf Hassan, Senior Financial Coordinator. Salary, $63,000 annually. Hamza Osmandiri, Deputy Director of Trade Relations, salary $75,000. Safia Noor Abdul, Chief Administrative Officer, salary $82,000. Their salaries were modest. Their lifestyles were not. Hassan bought a lakefront property in Wazada for $2.3 million. Cash. No mortgage. No loan. The transaction cleared in 72 hours. DEA owned 4 luxury vehicles registered in Montana under Shell LLC, a Range Rover, a Porsche Cayenne, a Mercedes G-Wagon, a Tesla Model X. Combined value, $470,000. Abdul transferred $1.1 million to accounts in Turkey and Kenya over 16 months. The transactions were labeled as family support and business investments. But financial analysts traced the receiving accounts. They led to ghost companies with no employees, no products, and no physical addresses. The FBI opened a Title III wiretap in February 2024. What they heard over the next 9 months was stunning in its brazenness. Hassan discussed shipment weights, delivery schedules, payment confirmations. One call to a contact in Culiacan, Mexico, referenced a textile shipment totaling 800 kilograms. Another detailed the processing fees of $47 million for a customs facilitation. Agents cross-referenced the dates. Every shipment discussed on wiretaps aligned with fentanyl seizures along the I-35 corridor within 2 weeks. The mechanism became horrifyingly clear. Cartels shipped narcotics into the United States through traditional smuggling routes, border tunnels, corrupted ports, hidden compartments in commercial freight. Once inside, the drugs moved through Somali distribution cells built to look like community logistics networks, delivery drivers, warehouse workers, small business owners. They believed they were moving legal goods for immigrant-owned companies. They had no idea they were transporting death. The money flowed back through the Treasury office accounts, disguised as remittances and trade payments. From there, it moved offshore to cartel-controlled banks in Sinaloa, Jalisco, and Medellin. The Treasury office took a facilitation fee, 7% of every transaction. The system had been running since 2017, 7 years. 2 presidential administrations, multiple State Department audits. No one noticed. Type yes if you want to see how they finally brought it down. By October 2024, the FBI had built an airtight case. Evidence files exceeded 12,000 pages. Wiretaps captured over 300 incriminating conversations. Financial analysis traced $410 million through 19 countries. Surveillance teams documented 17 suspects making weekly trips to storage facilities in Shakopee, Burnsville, and Lakeville. The Department of Justice convened a federal task force. FBI. ICE Homeland Security Investigations. ATF. IRS Criminal Investigation, U.S. Marshals Service. This wasn't a single agency operation. This was a synchronized federal strike designed to dismantle the entire network in one coordinated assault. Lead prosecutor Margaret Lindholm, U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, signed off on arrest warrants for 23 individuals. Search warrants covered 31 locations. The Somali Treasury Office. 6 private residences, 11 storage units, 8 commercial properties, 5 vehicles. Timing was everything. If one location was hit before the others, the network would scatter, phones would be wiped, evidence would vanish, bank accounts would drain. The raids had to happen simultaneously across a 50-mile radius. Tactical planning took 6 weeks. FBI hostage rescue teams specialists coordinated with D Special Response Teams and ICE tactical units. Agents studied blueprints of the Treasury office. The building was a 3-story structure with reinforced entry doors, security cameras on every floor, and a basement level that didn't appear on public architectural records. Thermal imaging from external surveillance showed the basement was climate-controlled and actively used. That anomaly became the priority target. The order came at 4:14 a.m., November 19, 2024. Go. 73 agents moved through darkness. No lights. Vehicles staged 2 blocks away. Teams approached on foot. Breath visible in the cold air. Frost covered the sidewalks. Exhaust from idling engines created fog under streetlights. The city was silent except for the low hum of tactical radios and the metallic click of rifles being made ready. At exactly 4:52 a.m., the breaching team hit the front entrance of the Treasury office. The battering ram struck once. The reinforced door buckled but held. Twice! The frame splintered. 3 times. The door exploded inward. Flashbangs detonated in the lobby. White light. Percussive thunder. Agents poured inside, voices overlapping in controlled aggression. Federal agents. Search warrant. Hands visible. Do not move. The first floor was administrative. Desks. Filing cabinets. Computers still warm. 4 employees were inside at that hour. 3 raised their hands immediately. 1 reached for a phone. He was on the ground in 2 seconds. Flex cuffs. Phone secured as evidence. The second floor held financial records. Agents moved room to room, clearing spaces, photographing everything. Ledgers lined shelves floor to ceiling, not digital records. Physical books, handwritten entries in Somali, Arabic, and English. Columns of numbers, dates, initials, account, codes. One agent opened a filing cabinet. Inside were bundles of cash wrapped in plastic. $50 bills, hundreds, stacked in rows. Another cabinet, more cash, and another. The second floor alone contained $4.2 million in U.S. currency. Oh, but the basement was where the truth lived. The stairwell leading down was secured with a biometric scanner. Breaching tools were brought forward. Agents forced the door. The lock shattered. The air rising from below was cool and filtered, processed through industrial ventilation systems. The basement wasn't storage. It was a processing center. The space was divided into zones. One area held industrial scales, vacuum sealers, packaging materials. Another contained rows of duffel bags, each tagged with numbered labels in marker. A third section held computers with encrypted hard drives and satellite communication equipment. And along the back wall, stacked on reinforced steel shelving, were bricks of compressed narcotics, white powder, crystal shards, pills pressed with cartel stamps. Agents began counting. 100 kilograms, 200, 500, 1,000. The final count was staggering. 3,900 kilograms, 3.9 tons, fentanyl, methamphetamine, heroin, cocaine, the largest single-location drug seizure in Minnesota history. The de-estimated street value at over $700 million. Share this so every American understands what was operating in plain sight. While the Treasury office was being secured, simultaneous raids were underway across the metro. At a storage unit in Shakopee, agents found 230 kilograms of fentanyl hidden inside furniture shipments labeled as humanitarian aid. At a warehouse in Burnsville, they discovered hydraulic presses used to manufacture counterfeit pills, along with 60,000 pills already packaged for distribution. At Hassan's lakefront home in Wasada, investigators uncovered a hidden safe behind a bedroom closet. Inside were gold bars, diamond jewelry, $87 million in cashier's checks, and cryptocurrency wallet keys stored on hardware drives. Hamza Diryai was arrested at Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport at 6:18 a.m. He was attempting to board Turkish Airlines Flight 123 to Istanbul. 2 carry-on bags. $3.4 million in cash divided into vacuum-sealed bundles hidden inside false compartments. Safia Abdul was taken into custody at her apartment in Edina. Agents found encrypted phones from 3 different countries. False identification documents from Somalia, Kenya, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. Handwritten ledgers detailing payments to cartel operatives in Guadalajara and Tijuana. By 9:30 a.m., 21 individuals were in federal custody. 2 suspects remained at large. An emergency freeze was placed on 43 bank accounts across 11 countries. Interpol issued red notices for the fugitives. The shock spread faster than news alerts. Television crews surrounded the Treasury office by mid-morning. Helicopters circled overhead, cameras rolling. The Somali American community in Cedar-Riverside was stunned. For years, the Treasury office had been a trusted institution. Families went there to send money home to relatives in Mogadishu. Business owners sought advice on international trade regulations. Cultural events were hosted in the building's conference rooms. Community leaders held meetings there. The idea that it had been functioning as a cartel money laundering hub seemed impossible, but the evidence was absolute. If this shocks you, hit like now. Federal prosecutors held a press conference at 2:00 p.m. U.S. Attorney Margaret Lindholm stood flanked by representatives from the FBI, ICE, and ATF. She didn't soften the language. This operation represents one of the most sophisticated narcotics trafficking and money laundering conspiracies we have encountered on American soil. For nearly 7 years, individuals operating under the protection of diplomatic affiliation exploited their positions to facilitate the distribution of lethal narcotics and the laundering of hundreds of millions of dollars in cartel proceeds. The drugs seized today were destined for communities across the Midwest. The money recovered was payment for poison that has killed thousands of Americans. This was not crime hiding in shadows. This was crime hiding behind legitimacy. E-investigation revealed connections spanning continents. Financial records showed payments to contacts in Sinaloa, Jalisco, Bogota, Medellin, Mombasa, Dubai, Istanbul, and Karachi. The Treasury Office had been receiving shipments through corrupted freight companies operating out of Long Beach, California, and Newark, New Jersey. Containers labeled as textiles and electronics were packed with narcotics concealed in false compartments. Customs inspections had been bypassed using falsified diplomatic credentials and bribed port officials. One ledger recovered from the basement detailed a single transaction. March 2023. 800 kilograms of fentanyl shipped from Culiacan to Los Angeles, transported overland to Minneapolis. Wholesale value, $32 million. The Treasury Office processed the payment through 5 shell companies. Facilitation fee, 7%. $2.2 million for a single transaction. The drugs were distributed through 12 cells operating in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Dakotas. Within 60 days, the D linked that shipment to 19 overdose deaths, 19 families destroyed. For profit. Comment justice if you believe every individual involved deserves the maximum sentence. The legal proceedings moved with unusual speed. Federal prosecutors charged 21 defendants with conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, money laundering under the Bank Secrecy Act, racketeering under RICO statutes, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Hassan Dirai and Abdul faced additional charges under the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act for exploiting diplomatic status to facilitate criminal activity. Bail was denied for all primary defendants. Wiretaps, financial records, physical narcotics. Testimony from cooperating witnesses. By January 2025, 12 defendants had accepted plea agreements in exchange for cooperation. Their testimony revealed the internal structure of the operation. The names of cartel contacts. The methods used to evade detection. The timeline of corruption. Kison's plea agreement was particularly damaging. He confirmed the operation began in 2017 after he was approached by a representative of the Sinaloa cartel at a trade conference in Mexico City. The representative offered a partnership. The cartel needed infrastructure to move money out of the United States without triggering federal scrutiny. Hassan provided the solution. In exchange, he received 5% of all laundered funds. Over 7 years, that percentage amounted to $31 million in personal payments. Wire transfers, cash deliveries, cryptocurrency deposits, gold bullion shipments. Dirai's testimony exposed the diplomatic angle. He admitted to using his position to obtain credentials that allowed shipments to bypass inspections. He provided false documentation to customs officials, claiming containers held humanitarian aid or cultural materials protected under international agreements. He also confirmed that officials within the Somali government were aware of the operation. They received financial kickbacks. The revelation triggered a diplomatic crisis. The State Department recalled its ambassador to Somalia. The Somali government issued denials, but evidence suggested otherwise. Bank records showed payments to government officials in Mogadishu totaling $8.3 million over 4 years. Abdul's cooperation revealed the human cost. She detailed how the distribution network targeted vulnerable communities. Drivers were recruited from immigrant populations struggling financially. They were told they were transporting legal goods, textiles, electronics, food products. If they were caught, they faced deportation or federal prosecution, while the leadership remained insulated. The system was designed with plausible deniability. Street-level operatives knew nothing. Mid-level coordinators knew only their section. Hassan, Dirii, and Abdul controlled the full picture. Type yes if you believe every diplomatic office in America should face this level of scrutiny. The sentencing phase began in March 2025. Hassan received 47 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Judge Theodore Hansen delivered the sentence with controlled fury. You exploited trust. You weaponized diplomacy. You facilitated the deaths of American citizens for profit. This court has no sympathy. Dirii received 39 years. Abdul received 32 years. 11 other defendants received sentences ranging from 8 to 25 years. Asset forfeiture proceedings seized the Wazada lakefront property. 4 luxury vehicles. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Singapore. All cryptocurrency holdings, the total asset recovery exceeded $410 million. Those funds were directed to the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund. Portions were allocated to victim compensation programs, overdose prevention and initiatives, and law enforcement training on diplomatic corruption indicators. But the damage couldn't be undone. Families in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas had lost sons, daughters, brothers, sisters. The crescent moon stamp that marked those pills became a symbol of how corruption operates in plain sight. Marcus Holden's mother, Patricia, testified at Hassan's sentencing hearing. She spoke for 11 minutes. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply asked how a government office, a place families trusted, had been allowed to become a distribution hub for the drugs that killed her son. The judge had no answer. No one did. The investigation didn't end with arrests. Federal agencies launched comprehensive audits of all foreign liaison offices operating in the United States. New protocols were implemented for financial oversight, diplomatic credential verification, and interagency information sharing. The Treasury office building in Cedar-Riverside was permanently closed. The Somali government dissolved the liaison program entirely, citing loss of credibility and legal exposure. But the questions remained. How many other offices are operating the same way? How many other cartels have embedded themselves in institutions designed to serve immigrant communities? How many warnings were ignored? If you believe this investigation exposed a threat most Americans don't know exists, share this video now. Corruption doesn't announce itself with sirens and flashing lights. It infiltrates slowly, finding gaps in oversight, exploiting trust, embedding itself in systems designed to serve vulnerable populations. For 7 years, the Somali Treasury office operated with impunity. Officials attended community events. They processed legitimate transactions. They maintained a facade of service and integrity while facilitating the deaths of thousands. The drugs seized in that basement would have reached schools, parks, college campuses, neighborhoods where children play. The money recovered was payment for addiction, overdose, and grief measured in body bags and destroyed families. Trust inside institutions weakened. Families who relied on the Treasury office for remittances and cultural services felt betrayed. Somali American leaders spoke publicly about the damage to their community's reputation, emphasizing that the actions of 17 criminals did not represent an entire population. But the association lingered. Bias, suspicion, fear. The operation had consequences far beyond the courtroom. This case also revealed structural vulnerabilities. Diplomatic protections, even limited ones, can be weaponized by criminal networks. Financial systems designed to facilitate international commerce can be hijacked. Oversight mechanisms failed at multiple levels. Multiple agencies had pieces of the puzzle, but coordination gaps prevented early detection. It took the death of a 19-year-old college student to trigger the investigation that should have started years earlier. Comment your thoughts on how diplomatic offices should be monitored moving forward. The fight against narcotics trafficking is not one with a single raid. It's a continuous effort requiring vigilance, resources, and accountability. The individuals responsible for the Somali Treasury operation are behind bars. The drugs are off the streets. The money is seized. But the cartels that supplied those drugs are still operating. The smuggling routes are still active. The demand for fentanyl and methamphetamine has not disappeared. Every seizure is a victory. Every arrest is progress. But the war is far from over. New networks are forming. New methods are being tested. Corruption finds new hosts. The crescent moon stamp may be gone, but other signatures are emerging in other cities. Other communities, other trusted institutions. Vigilance cannot be seasonal. Oversight cannot be symbolic. The institutions we trust must be held to the highest standards, because when they fail, people die. The line between law and crime was erased inside that building on Cedar-Riverside. It is our responsibility to ensure it never happens again. If this investigation proved how deeply corruption can hide, hit like and share so more communities understand what to watch for. Subscribe to stay informed on federal operations that protect American lives. This story is not an outlier. It is a warning. The fight continues. The truth must spread. Justice demands it